Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judah, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the Full10Yards NFL Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Full 10 Yards NFL Podcast. This is our Week 5 preview, and this is a very special episode that we split into two parts. Joining me for the first part is someone who I'm sure you're aware of. He's here today to talk about his new book, The American Football Revolution, a book on how Britain fell in love with the NFL, as well as all things London games with the Bills and Jags playing at Spurs on Sunday. He's also a regular on the Nat Coombs Show and TalkSport's NFL coverage as well, and a college football expert, as well as many more things. And someone I look up to as a sports journalism student too. I'm of course talking about Ben Isaacs. Welcome, Ben. It's awesome to have you on the podcast, mate.
Well, thanks for having me. It started to feel touch and go because we were trying to find a time and day that worked for us both. We finally got it lined up, and it's a good time with it being London week.
Oh, of course. I'll be there on Sunday. I'm sure you will be too. And it's we had the Jags and the Falcons last week, and we'll get into it now. Really, the Jags will become the first team to play back-to-back games in London. You were at the JAX Foundation night last night as well. I saw on your Twitter account. They really are trying to make something of their following in the UK. Obviously, 10 games in London now, going to play their 11th, and it really feels that they're trying to invest in the UK market more than any other team, as they have. They did do previously, but now more so now that the international marketing schemes come in. Now the Jags are really making a push at this, aren't they?
Yeah, they're spending an absolute fortune on everything, basically. Although, part of that is the £25 I spent on raffle tickets yesterday and won absolutely nothing. I'm going to continue to bang on about that. Top prize was corporate seats to see Taylor Swift at Wembley. It was a lot of Wembley prizes because obviously Shad Khan's got his connections there. But yeah, they're ploughing money and time in, and it's the time that I've got the most respect for. All the kind of jag tag stuff they've done, all the there's a thing, Gridiron Grant, that they're involved in. Students can kind of make their case and get a load of things paid for. The kind of opportunities that they're offering to, especially kind of women and girls who are getting into the sport and getting them a chance to play flag football and all that kind of thing. It's been lovely to see. And you're right. I mean, they're not the only team with international marketing rights here. In fact, the Bears and the Jets had a kids flag football competition that was going on earlier this year, but nothing matches what the Jaguars have been doing. Their commitment to the UK has been admirable, but of course, I mean, they're not doing it just for fun. They're doing it because they know that there's a chance to really grow their own brand. Like the Jaguars are obviously one of the three newest teams in the NFL. They are just, it's not a city that when the Panthers and Jaguars were awarded their franchises, Jacksonville was not expected to get it. They were like St. Louis wanted a team at the time. Memphis wanted a team. It was Jacksonville were behind all that. Jacksonville did not have the name recognition in America, let alone internationally. And this has really helped them because they've got the chance to be a fixture in Jacksonville, but also be a fixture in one of the best known cities in the world. So yeah, they're putting a lot into it, and I'm sure they're hoping, and I think they are certainly seeing the start of it. They'll be hoping to get a lot out of it as well.
Yeah, and among the people at the event last night, obviously Hall of Famer, the Jags' first Hall of Famer, Tony Boselli, and the commissioner as well. Did you get anything out of their conversations with them?
Tony Boselli was wonderful. We had a good little chat. I was there with Chris Milner. Chris Milner went up to him. Chris Milner, of course, the proprietor of National Vintage League, went up and pointed out that he was wearing a cap that was from the very first Jaguars game, and that he'd had it signed by Tony Boselli at some other point. Tony Boselli seemed really impressed and surprised to see this hat, but it certainly helped break the ice and allowed me to start asking Tony some questions. And I asked him, what do you think the Jags are going to do next season? They're here for like a week and a half playing 2 games, and he felt very confident that they'll be playing 2 games here next season. And what he said to me was that with the situation with the stadium in Jacksonville, basically they're trying to get that stadium rebuilt. They're looking for money to do it, as pretty much every NFL franchise does. That's not a Jags thing. That's an NFL thing. They want public money to redo the stadium. Now, let's assume they get that money. That stadium will be out of commission for a while, and they've got to figure out where they're going to play games. And his thought was that if that stadium is being rebuilt, then we can expect more than 2 games in London at that point. Again, none of this is coming officially from the Jags. This is Tony Baselli's thoughts, but he's pretty plugged into that organization. They don't have a lot of events where they don't wheel him out. He's the most legendary player they've ever had, one of the best offensive linemen of his era. I was surprised he was being so, open and candid about that. It makes me feel this is a conversation that the Jags are having a lot internally. Now, it does of course beg the question: if they don't get funding for that stadium, then what happens? Do we see a London Jaguars team? And is that part of the reason why they're playing 2 games now, to see how that goes? Because no one's ever done that, play 2 games in a row. Of course, the game this week is technically a road game, which I guess it might feel like that way for the Jags, because Wembley is their second home, so Spurs will feel like a road game. So I really feel like this is the NFL at least trying to figure out how it works. How will it feel for a team to play 2 games in London and stay here for an extended period? Because we know that if there is a team that ever comes to London permanently, they're going to play in chunks. You'll have a handful of games in London, then you'll have to go on a long US road trip, then you'll come back, play a chunk of games. It won't be back and forth every week. I feel like they're testing the water, trying to figure out what that does to the players, and I imagine they'll be quizzing them a lot afterwards.
For sure, yeah. You can have many conversations back and forth after this game. Obviously, big test for the NFL having 2 games back to back, and no bye week afterwards as well. The Jags, I think, was week 9, so they're going straight back into their schedule after this game. Before we get onto the book, which actually is a nice segue into that, we'll talk about Thursday Night Football just because you're a Bears fan, and we couldn't not talk about the 40-20 Thursday Night Football win over the Commanders last night. DJ Moore had a game, didn't he? He probably saved Matt Eberflus's job, didn't he? Let's be honest.
Yeah, he really did. Now, like I say, last night I was there with Chris Milner, and he's a big Washington fan, and he did ask me, do you want to come and watch the game at the NVL warehouse tonight? And I declined that offer, in part because did I really want to see the Bears get absolutely ruined in front of a Washington fan? That didn't have much appeal to me. And there were people who know quite a bit in the NFL, people who were very plugged into the NFL, who I was talking to yesterday, who seemed very confident that a Washington win would have meant that today we would be hearing that Eberflus had been fired. Like, it was, I don't think this was simply a bit of guesswork. I think this is what was known, that his job was on the line because of it being that mini bye after the Thursday. You got 10 days to kind of get something else figured out. But no, instead they actually finished the game. It's worth saying that the offense has been pretty good the last couple of weeks. The defense has let them down. Obviously, there were some offensive mistakes against Denver as well, but they did look like a different team against Denver than they did in the previous 3 weeks. Now, the game against Washington, like, the Commanders were just awful. Like, I don't know how much to read into this. Like, I'm certainly not going to read into it, oh, do you know what? The Bears are good. Look at that first half offense. Like, that feels like an aberration. But it's a proof of concept. We can now see from these 2 games that the Bears can put points together, and DJ Moore and Cole Kmet can be weapons. Justin Fields, I've been a big fan of him since before Ohio State. Since he was at Georgia, I was a big fan of his. So I still very much believe in Justin Fields, and I've had a bit of stick from that over the last few weeks, and with good reason. But like, the problem is that if you watch most of your games through Red Zone, and Red Zone is fantastic, and I completely understand why someone would feel, okay, look, my team's playing at 9, I'm going to watch Red Zone first or whatever. I get it completely, but you don't get any concept of kind of how those players are actually playing unless you really watch those games. Even the condensed games don't give you the full feel. So I've watched a lot of Justin Fields, and most of the problems have been with the coaching, the play calling, the offensive line, the defense. It is very difficult to get anything done with those things, but the Commanders just gave them no problems, absolutely no problems. That first half was horrendous. The Washington front four was really good, but they got bullied by a makeshift Bears offensive line. That simply shouldn't happen. They couldn't stop the run. Like they were just like running backs were getting through 2 or 3 tackles. It was embarrassing. The Commanders offense, especially in that first half, was just so anemic. It was a terrible performance by a team that really should have beaten the Eagles just, a few nights ago.
And the Bears were without 2 of their top DBs as well, and Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson. They didn't play. It's that's a banged up Bears team, and they couldn't beat them after taking the Super Bowl representative from the NFC all the way to overtime.
Yeah. I mean, couldn't even not just beat them; they couldn't even keep it close. So I think if I was going to read anything into this game, it would be that Washington are going to really run hot and cold. And they're going to have some really good games and some really bad games. And for the Bears, it'll be if you let that offense play, they will put up points. But you've got to attack their defense as well, which is what Denver did. But the play calling got very cowardly. In fact, first 2 weeks of the season, it was all very cowardly. Let's not have Justin Fields do too many designed runs. Let's not take too many shots. Let's not try and make those big plays in case they don't come off. Against Denver, they actually tried some of those things, and then it got cowardly in the second half, coaching to not lose. And this is the first time that it felt like they've coached to try and win a game the entire way through. There are some weapons on that offense for the Bears. I really still don't think they're going to win many games this season, but if they can have more performances like that, then the coaches will keep their jobs. Justin Fields will remain the Bears quarterback for next season. And they're going to have 2 high draft picks. They'll have their own draft pick. They'll have the Panthers draft pick. And they can, hopefully, as a Bears fan, they can add some weapons. But this Washington team has got to figure itself out, because that was as poor a performance as I've seen all season, because the Bears have been the worst team in football through 4 weeks, and you let yourself get destroyed by them and not even be in the game. Washington are better than that. They're a pretty good team, but they look worryingly inconsistent.
Yeah, I agree with you that Fields isn't the issue either, because we're big advocates of Fields on this podcast. I've been saying for weeks, why isn't he running the ball more? Because we saw at the end of last year, especially the game against Miami, he just took over the game with his legs in that game last year, and we've not seen that at all this year. So I've been saying that this whole time, and I agree with you there. I think obviously for me, I really rate Fields. And you've got a good opportunity now where you can build a big roster if the Panthers do suck, and Fields is the guy, obviously, because they're not looking great. You've got that, as I said, at the moment you hold before the game yesterday, you held the top 2 picks in the draft. So if you can sort out the rest of the year, that's a good segue for the rest of this Bears team, although I think it will probably be with a new coach and stuff. On to the book. I really enjoyed reading the book, by the way. It's great. In the book, that's all right, no trouble at all. You recap the relationship between the NFL and the UK, decade by decade, through the stories of the people who made it what it is today, us, the fans. Just what made you want to write the book? Obviously it's not your first one either. You have today in NFL history too. What inspired you to make this book? Because I really enjoyed reading, everyone's stories and how they got into the NFL.
I was sick of the fact that the fans, groups of people who don't get enough credit, Bears and the fans. I was sick of the fact that the fans would never get enough credit for making the NFL what it is in the UK right now. Now, I'm saying this as a member of the media, broadcaster, a writer. People like me have done a very good job at patting themselves on the back of look how we've grown the game, look how we've increased exposure. If you're Sky or BBC or Channel 4 or ITV or Channel 5, everyone's had a go of it. They're very pleased with themselves with their coverage, how they have exposed new fans to the game and all this stuff. And, it's all fair enough. NFL UK can feel justifiably proud of the way they've really opened the doors, the way that they've got games over here and, get the stadiums packed out. All kind of fair enough. But what about the people who are actually tuning into those broadcasts, often in the middle of the night? What about the people who are spending piles of money on very expensive NFL tickets? What about the people who are making sure that, because chances are, if you walk down your street and started knocking on people's doors, you wouldn't find piles of other NFL fans. We've had to make our own communities. So for people like you, and I'm talking specifically to you here, Sam, rather than just any listener, people like you involved in a podcast and having a community that builds up around it, my God, those people do not get enough credit. And one of the phrases that someone had said to me during the creation of the book was like that fans would kind of fill in the gaps. So, in the early days, we'd have highlights once a week. We would have to fill in the gaps. And there would be sometimes reading the magazines, but like finding friends in school and that sort of thing, making those connections. And obviously, in the online era, those connections are easier to make. But you've still got to have those communities that spring up. And there are so many different types of NFL communities within the wider NFL community. So I'd had this idea for a while of like, there isn't enough about the fans. The fans are kind of forgotten in all this. And I thought, okay, well, would the book be interesting? It's a chronological history of NFL fandom. And I thought, I don't know. And then one morning I woke up and I thought, the fans' voices have to tell the story. It has to be not just me talking about the fans. It's got to be fans talking about themselves. So from that point, I hit upon the idea that every chapter will be focused on one particular fan. Not because that fan is necessarily most famous or, is like high profile. It's that for that particular era, I felt that their voice would be the most interesting. So, from the very first chapter, it's a person who was there watching Channel 4, the very first broadcast. It's interesting because he became a big Green Bay Packers fan. The Green Bay Packers were not on TV much in those days. You couldn't buy any Green Bay Packers merchandise because they were not one of the approved, in effect, NFL teams that you could buy merchandise for. A later chapter, well, not much later, but a chapter then goes into the whole thing of the merchandise and how important it was in those early days, especially for kids. Having that merchandise was kind of something that connected them to the sport. So once I had that idea, I then really believed in it myself, of like each person is a chapter, and in effect, everyone who reads the book will relate to at least one person in that book. I would expect more than one person, even if it's from a different era, their particular interest and what drew them to it. So it needed to be individual stories that fitted together as one larger story, which was always going to be the tricky thing. But I thought, okay, I believe in this idea. And I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna pitch it to Pitch Publishing. They're the UK's largest independent sports book publisher. But they're the ones I'd want to go with. They'd already published 2 American football books. One, the story of the London Monarchs, and one called The Special Relationship, which was a history of the sport in the UK, from like military teams playing to Brit Ball, through to like full recaps of every game that's been played on these shores, but not about the fans. But I thought, okay, let's go to pitch, and at worst they'll say no, and I'll ask for some feedback, and hopefully that will help me get it published somewhere else. But we had conversations throughout the day. They suggested a different title. The title that's on the book right now is the one that they suggested. I love that title because my title sucked. My title was Wrong Side of the Pond, and they said, what about the American Football Revolution? I'm like, yeah, no, that's brilliant. Yeah, let's just do that. By the end of that day, I'd signed a contract. So that all moved very, very fast. And then it was like, okay, now comes the pressure, not the pressure of hitting the deadline, but the pressure of the responsibility of telling the fans' story. Because I don't know if anyone, if I make a hash of this, maybe no one else ever gets to write about NFL UK fans again. And the fans might feel, do you know what? I don't feel represented by this book. It doesn't it doesn't cover everybody. It doesn't tell my sort of story. And that was the pressure, because I wanted every fan to be able to read it and say, yeah, I'm in this book, in effect. That's my story too. And to be able to have a book on their shelves that they can say, yeah, that's about us, because no one had done that before. I don't think anyone thought that people would be interested or enough people would buy it. And I don't even know how many it sold. I don't know how many they were expecting to sell. I don't know how many they've printed. All I know is the response I've had on social media from fans has just really blown me away. It's amazing seeing all the reviews on Amazon, and they're really important because reviews on Amazon, I'm told by the publisher, is the most important way that you can spread the word about a book that isn't something that's being marketed with, like, tens of thousands of pounds. So if you do read the book, please leave a review on Amazon, no matter where you bought it, because just having lots of Amazon reviews gets your book appearing when people are searching for American football books. So it's generally near the top of the American football chart on Amazon, which is great. And that's, I think, testament to the people who've been posting those reviews. And notice, Sam, I'm not saying please go and leave a positive review. Thankfully, every review has been 5 stars. But just, I want, an honest review on Amazon is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I really enjoyed reading it, especially for me, the stories of like the 80s and the 90s, because I mean, I wasn't there then. I'm an early noughties kid. I wasn't there to experience any of it, and I learned a lot about how everyone else got into it, and it just made me think as well how lucky I am that I fell in love with the game, within the past decade, because it just shows how dedicated the fan base is, how however they found it. There's everyone's got a way, and it's why we're all special. I mean, me as well, someone who's half in the fan base, half in the media world now. Again, I'm training to be a journalist. I'm sort of using my fan knowledge. I've built up a really big knowledge of the sport. Now I'm using it to actually make content. Have things published and stuff like that. And now I found my way into it, and now I'm loving it, and I'm hoping to have a career in it, that kind of thing. And it's just interesting to read how everyone else got into it themselves, especially when there wasn't much around at all.
Basically, what's really interesting is that you saying you feel really lucky to have got into it when you did. I think for every NFL fan, they'll think the same thing of like, I'm lucky that I got into it at this point, because it feels so special. So for you, you'll feel like, I got into it as it was starting to explode, and we had all this access.
For me, it was seeing JAJ for the Dolphins, obviously British running back, big player, running, obviously 1,000-yard rusher. You're just like, okay, wow, that's a real big moment for the British game. And then that's that. I fell in love with it from then. I'm now this is season 7 or 8 for me now. Now I'm, like I said, I'm hosting a podcast. I've had my work published. It's it's just just like a whirlwind, really.
Yeah, everyone's got that. Everyone's got their origin story. Everyone's got this special feeling about how when they first got into it, and like the ones who got into it in the 80s, it felt like being part of a very exclusive club. It was like the cool new thing. For those who got into it in the 90s, I think they've got a little bit of a kind of chip on their shoulder about like they got into it as the sport was really starting to dip, and that they're hardcore fans. And then you've got those kind of who got in just before the international series started, where it was starting to ramp up a little bit, and then anyone who came into it during the international series, it's obviously again a very different experience. It's your experience of like, well, yeah, they come here, and I can watch any game I want, and I can just get up and I'd be like, okay, well, I'll watch yesterday's games, or I'll watch I'll watch these condensed games. This is the thing. Everyone's story matters. Everyone's story is special. I don't just mean in the book, but I mean throughout fandom, because there are plenty of people from the 80s who want to be gatekeepers, who want to be like, oh, you new fans, and you don't know this, and you see more of the game on like TikTok than you do an actual game. All this stuff. People should just enjoy the sport however you want to enjoy it. Don't belittle the way that other people want to enjoy it. If there are some people who are like, right, okay, all I want to do is I just want to watch my team and I don't care about anything else until the playoffs, fine, I respect it. If you're like, I'm obsessed with fantasy and I'm only going to watch Red Zone and I've got 20 teams and I've got all these different screens going, like, to be honest, it wouldn't work for me. That works for you. Great. If someone's like, oh, I watch some games, but really I'm just playing Madden all the time. Fine. If just come as you are, enjoy the sport however you want. Like we're such a kind of diverse community because we, like, the vast majority of us didn't grow up being born into a team or a particular area that is connected to a team. So we chose teams through random reasons. It might be the first team we saw, it might be a logo we saw, it might be a relative went abroad and bought a t-shirt and like it stuck. It's whatever. And we've just found ourselves within these groups, whether you're like a Ravens fan and you spend all your time on like WhatsApp and like Ravens Twitter, just talking about that with people from all over the country who you perhaps meet once a year. And it's special for all of us. And that's why podcasts like this are so important. People doing it for themselves, saying like, well, there were loads of great American podcasts. I mean, God, it was a thrill seeing my book on around the NFL and having like Greg Rosenthal and the team talking about the book. Like, Jesus Christ, there were so many great ones out there, but to hear it with our own voices, to know that these are people with a similar experience to us, that we're not just like picking up the paper and it's all NFL. It's like we've got to go and seek it out. So, like, I want to thank you and people like you involved in this sort of creation, because you guys fill in the gaps, and there are so many gaps because this isn't a national sport here. We have to fill in these gaps. Otherwise, people will drift away, and people won't feel part of the community. And the community is what made the sport what it is. The community is why there's so many from the 80s still around. The community is why the sport didn't completely die in the mid to late 90s to early 2000s. And community is why it's so great when you see all these groups of fans like head into the games in London with their different jerseys on, but like clearly a group of mates who get on so well. They've all got their different teams, and that just doesn't happen in America. So we've ended up with something really special and different here, but we wouldn't have it right now if it wasn't for the people out there making podcasts, writing blogs, being very entertaining on Twitter, that sort of thing. And I love it, and I feel proud to be part of that community. I feel I am of the community. I'm not talking at the community. I want to be in it, hopefully being a voice for everybody, because not everyone's going to get to go to some fancy shindig at the top of the cheese grater in London and chat to Tony Baselli. So I just want to make sure that I'm still a fan, that I'm not just, a cynical member of the media. Because trust me, Sam, it's a slippery slope. It's so easy. It's so easy to feel like one of those cynical members of the media. I mean, I've been there where it's been like a cold, rainy Sunday morning in October, and I think, oh, I've got to get to Wembley, or I've got to get to Tottenham. And then I think 8-year-old me would be like, what the hell are you doing? Just get up, go there, stop moaning about the weather. There's NFL on your doorstep. And like, here I am. This week's game I think my math is correct. It's the 35th
yes,
game
it is,
in London,
35th.
and it will be my 35th. I've been to every single one. I don't know how many people have done that. It's something I'd like to write about, actually. So if you're listening to this and you've been to every single London game, please drop me a line on Twitter, because I'd love to know.
There we are. I think you summed it up excellently there. I mean, even with me, in my house, I live with a Broncos fan and a Seahawks fan. We have a Packers fan over every Sunday to watch the games as well. I've met them all through university, all through the love of NFL. We've obviously, they've all been regulars on this podcast as well. So we've really built a community, as you said here. And it leads us on to the game, obviously, on Sunday as well. The Jags head to London to play the Bills, who... they're the headline of this game. Really, it's not very often we have one of the most exciting games of the week in London. it probably could be the second most interesting game this week after probably Sunday Night Football with obviously the Cowboys and the Niners. And there's a lot going for it too. Obviously, there's two playoff teams from last year: Josh Allen versus Josh Allen versus Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, he's becoming a massive star now, and it's great for him to be. He's a great person to market in the UK because he's so good. And obviously, again, as we mentioned earlier, it's the first time a team has played back-to-back games internationally. What are you looking at in this game? Because it's one of the games of the week, isn't it? And it's good to have it in London.
I had to rush off from Wembley. I missed the final quarter because I had to get to Talk Sport, where we were basically covering the Bills Dolphins game with a bit of everything else. And that first half, the teams just like two heavyweight boxers just trading blows with just very efficient drives. Sometimes you see a game go back and forth and it's big play, big play, big play. These were just really well-balanced drives. I just felt like these two offenses are so good. At some point, the defense is going to have to start making stops. And once that's done, that game is over. Whichever defense can start making stops. And, of course, the Bills started making stops, forcing turnovers. As good as the Bills' offense has been, which I absolutely love, I think it comes down to that defense. And it's, will the Jags be able to do enough against that defense, considering I'm expecting the Bills to put up points?
Well, they're getting Von Miller back, potentially as well. He's practiced the last couple of days. He's travelled to London. They've been good without him. Imagine if he plays in this game. The pass rush, they've been getting sacks. They're among the league leaders in sacks already. Add Von Miller to that team, then that's scary, isn't it? It's a scary thought.
Yeah, exactly. And they were able to make enough adjustments. They could see what the Dolphins were doing. And that Dolphins offense, of course, has been ridiculous. So I do worry a little bit for the Jags against the Bills, because the Bills have been so good. Like, you take out that first game of the season, which I think, frankly, for the most part, throw out performances in week one from now on, because so little is happening in preseason. Like, week one is just, it's ridiculous. I don't put much stock in it. So, okay, they lost. I accept that. But I'm ignoring that performance, because since then it's been very different. Trevor Lawrence has got to be able to attack that defense and be able to cope with the pressure that could well come at him, especially if Von Miller is back. The Jags are going to have to try and play with a lead. I do not fancy their chance if they've got to come from behind. If Josh Allen, as in the Bills' Josh Allen, if Josh Allen is given time, he can pick that Jags defense apart. These are two of the best teams in the AFC in theory. It's obviously not a must-win game for the Jags yet, but if they come back after this trip and they've still got a losing record, that's bad. Like, it's tough, because even if they win that division, just the playoff seeding is going to be a problem for them. I had the Bills as my Super Bowl winner at the start of the season, which I still feel good about. 49ers and Eagles aside, I still feel good about that Bills pick. I feel they're due, even though they've looked fantastic in other seasons and still not even got to the Super Bowl. I'm really excited about this one. This is on paper one of the best London games we've had in a long time. Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, what's not to like? I just don't see the Jags winning. I just hope it's a close one, because I don't have to rush off this time. I will be there for the whole thing. So I want it to be a contest in the fourth quarter, whereas last week it wasn't.
No. I think the Jags offense have really got to step up in this game. They've numerically they've actually done all right, but they can't really get to the red zone. It's been a lot of field goals. It's been look, Lawrence has only got 4 TDs in this game. This season, in the first 4 games. When if you look at his numbers for PFF, for example, he's up the top of the league in big time throws with Tua and Matt Stafford. Stafford's another person who's not really been able to put the touchdowns on the chart, but it's the offensive line has been a big worry for the Jags because Cam Robinson was suspended for PEDs. He's back this game. They also could get Zay Jones and Jamal Agnew back, who have been reliable pass catchers for Lawrence recently as well. They've had a load of drops, so hopefully having them back will be good. There obviously there's 3 key players to their offense. That's good news. But yeah, I think with them, they're one of the worst teams on third down and red zone percentage as well. They need to improve that to beat this Bills defense, because that's what they're really good at as well.
Yeah, that's it. Like they that defense is a lot of fun to watch. The Jacksonville pass rush has been good, but Josh Allen has not taken many sacks all season. He can be so good at reading that pressure and getting out of it. They've got to get him out of his rhythm. If they can get him out of his rhythm and build a little bit of a lead and try to play with that lead, try to kind of eat up as much clock as possible, try to give the Bills as few possessions as possible, then this can be good. But I think this is a matchup we could see again in the postseason. I still think even if the Jags lose, they can make the playoffs. I mean, the AFC is obviously a brutal ride through to the playoffs. There's just too many good teams in comparison with the NFC. But Bills Josh Allen should be, if he can get anywhere near the way he was against Miami, then this is going to be a long day / afternoon / morning, depending on your time zone. A long day for Jacksonville. Yeah,
and their defense luckily have, they're quite opportunistic. They've shipped yards, but they're one of the least penalised teams. They don't allow opponents to score. They're only allowing opponents to score on 27.3% of their drive, which is 6th best in the league. They've also produced a load of turnovers too, 9 in 4 games, which is 4th best in the league too. And that's one thing that Josh Allen's got. He can turn the ball over. He's very aggressive. He's very obviously it's high risk, high reward with Allen, where he does. He maybe has 4 amazing plays, but also he might have 3 turnovers if he plays a game. We saw that last season a lot, especially we saw that against the Jets. That's where the Jags can attack Josh Allen. Really, is by if they can produce a turnover, then this game will change completely, because that's what they're good at, and that's what Allen has a tendency to do sometimes, especially fumble the football. He's got a lot of history fumbling the football.
Yeah, and it's what the Dolphins just couldn't really get done on Sunday, and he was in total control, and he was able to stay completely poised and and do what he wanted. And the game kind of fizzled out in the fourth quarter once that lead had really been established. But they did not force him into mistakes. And then the Bills defense was opportunistic. It wasn't that Tua or anyone in particular was having a bad game. Just the Bills defense really stepped up. It'll be fascinating to see if, especially for those of us kind of at the game, because you never underestimate how much you see at a live game that you don't see on TV. So especially for those of us who were there, it'll be interesting to see if we can see a difference between the two teams in their kind of energy levels, basically, because of the fact that the Jaguars will have been here for a week and a half and the Bills really not very long. And we haven't had a situation like that where you've got a team that's been there like a week longer than the other team. And it's going to be interesting, because if the Bills seem to come out flat and the Jags are flying, then I think a lot of it will be put down to the travel aspect. And then it's going to throw up so many questions about, going back to what we talked about at the top of the show, about an NFL franchise over here.
For sure. Again, the NFL are just, it's a great test event for them to see what they can do in the future. For me, I'm also going to pick the Bills in this one. I think, as much as I think Jacksonville are probably going to make this one interesting, I think especially, all the factors you said, a week extra in the UK, the Bills travelling late, that they've only just got here as well, there will be, there's loads of factors there. And also, obviously, the Jags, it's not Wembley, but, there is that sort of, I reckon they've got 2 really highly supported teams in the UK, so it'll be interesting to see how the crowd looks because the game on Sunday last week, it was a very Jags crowd, which we sometimes don't actually see at Wembley. I thought it was a lot more Jags jerseys than I thought I normally see at Wembley. But yeah, maybe they can use that to advantage. But I can't pick against the Bills just because they've looked so great for 3 weeks. For the last 3-4 weeks they've looked so good. Barring obviously the Jets loss.
Yeah, week one.
Yeah,
just
exactly as you said.
Throw it out the window. We're seeing that after preseason now, where not enough starters are getting reps, teams are coming out rusty. Like everyone, the 4 weeks of preseason were always boring. It was good to see the players who've been drafted. It's good to see kind of those depth chart battles, but not everyone's that interested in that, and I get it. And the games as contests aren't good to watch, but they really served a purpose. And the moving away from them, going to a 17-game regular season, cutting the preseason to 3 games, fewer opportunities there, starters just being kept out of it for reasons I completely understand. That week 1 is then ridiculous. Like how many hits had Aaron Rodgers taken since he left Green Bay? You know?
True. Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying just batter your quarterbacks, but it's just tricky. And that Bills team in week 1, and they're not the only ones, good or bad, that team in week 1 does not look like the team now. It looks like a very different team. And that's the only time that I think we've looked at the Bills and thought, this looks like a troubling football team. They're really good, and Jacksonville can be really good. And it's one of the great things about having them come to London every year. We get to see the development of Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has got it in him to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And it would be great if in a few years' time he's in that top 5. Like if we talk about the elite quarterbacks, that he is obviously in that conversation. And I'm not saying he's going to be Patrick Mahomes, but if he can be talked about in the same breath, and we can say, like, even if you're not a Jags fan, just to say, oh yeah, that's a guy I see at least once a year, kind of in the flesh, getting to see that and seeing his growth, because he was the number 1 overall pick. He felt like the most can't miss prospect that we've had since Andrew Luck, and probably more so than Andrew Luck. Those are my top 2. Caleb Williams, I think, is my 3rd. Let's see.
Yeah.
But having that, being able to see that growth, you know, like I say, even if you're not a Jags fan, being able to have that continuity and see someone develop in front of our very eyes is a privilege. That's something I'm just really enjoying. But I'm a bit of a freak like that.
Yeah, I mean, if I was picking someone to do a feature with in this game, it would be Trevor Lawrence, just because there's a chance that he can recapture an audience here in the UK, whereas because we see him so much. When Josh Allen, yes, you might see him on Sky 4 or 5 times a season, for example, but Lawrence you're going to see in the flesh in the UK on terrestrial TV. It's just it's a big opportunity, and he is the guy that could really push the Jags and the NFL forward further, because if you've got one of the top players in the league in that conversation, then I agree with you. Then it's a real big talking point. But yeah, thank you for coming on, Ben. It's been great to have you on to talk everything NFL UK, which is obviously very convenient with the London games being on. Again, thank you for coming on as a guest. It's been an honour to have you on, and I hope you enjoy the game on Sunday.
I hope so too. It's going to be better than last Sunday, I'm sure, because that one wasn't great. But getting to NFL games is lovely, and long may it continue.
Once again, a huge thank you to Ben for coming on the podcast. Again, as a sports journalism student, he's a good role model. I look up to him because he's made it. He's an NFL journalist and a press box, author and everything. So yeah, again, thank you for coming on, mate. And I'll be sure to have you on again in the future for any other project you want to promote on the podcast. On to the rest of week 5 now, where I've got Liam Horsley, the analytics guru for Full 10 Yards, obviously on the betting podcast, on the Go for Two podcast as well, in the network, and a good friend of mine as well. So Liam is a Chiefs fan. His Chiefs are playing the Vikings this week. I'll be sure to talk about that, as well as a deep dive into something like football too. So yeah, let's go and jump in and talk to Liam now about the rest of the week 5 slate. Okay, so on to the second part of the podcast now, where we've got Liam. As always, it's great to have you on, mate. We're going to go through each and every single game throughout the rest of week 5 on Sunday. Just quickly, a bit quick fire round, just to cover all the 10 remaining games that we'll see, and we'll start with Miami actually, mate, Liam, just because they just traded for Chase Claypool. It was a bit of a weird one out of nowhere. A late round pick swap. They're playing the Giants, so 11.5 point favourites against the Giants. This one makes sense because they've lost Eric Ezenkama and River Craycraft to injury. What do you think? Well, firstly, welcome to the podcast. Secondly, what do you make of this move? It literally has just happened just as soon as we start recording.
Yeah, I don't know. It's another get as many athletes that can run very fast, jump very high, and do crazy things. But yeah, he's not had a good last 10 games with the Bears. He's not blocking in the run game, which you'll have to do in Miami. Obviously, he's a bit of an issue in the locker room, which Mike McDaniel won't accept in Miami either. So yeah, it's a low cost move just to add some talent. But yeah, if I was a Miami fan, I'd be more worried about his impact on the dressing room than I would on the field. But yeah, I loved him coming out of college. He's just been terrible last 10 weeks for 10 games. Sorry, for the Bears. So yeah, it's just a low cost move, and for the Bears, it's one of the worst trades ever. That 32 pick trade that they did last year with the Steelers to get him.
I know,
that just looked even worse now. But yeah, for you guys, it's just low cost move. Doesn't work out. Cut him. Don't let him kind of rot the dressing room. But if he sorts his attitude out, he'll be better than your kind of 5th, 6th wide receiver you would have had. He's better than Robbie Anderson, so that's a start.
Well, they are. This you've got the clear 3 of Hill, Waddle, and Berrios. I'd say is number 3 now, and then and then after that is a bit of it would have been Ezenkama and Craycroft. Both of them are hurt, so obviously just added depth, and we'll see how much of a role he has in Miami. I don't expect it to be, especially early on. I don't expect it to be very much at all. But yeah, it's just a cover because obviously you lost two players who have key roles. I'd say, especially as in Karma, he's that sort of Deebo Samuel type of sort of player that McDaniel likes to use recently. And Craycraft is another slot guy who can get open really easily as well. So losing both of them makes sense. The Dolphins are huge favourites in this one, obviously. Coming off a huge loss to Buffalo. I wasn't really discouraged by the offense. I think the Buffalo defense just had an absolute blinder of a game. The defense for Miami does worry me, but luckily they're playing the Giants, who are a mess. So especially without Saquon Barkley, they've without Andrew Thomas as well. Their best offensive lineman. We saw when he missed Monday, the Daniel Jones was just under pressure like 90% of the time, it felt like. So I'm going to take the Dolphins to win this one, even without Teron Armstead, just because I think it's a big opportunity for Fangio's defense to sort of just make a statement. Because I saw a piece from Omar Kelly today that the Dolphins the players aren't really fully bought into this defense now, because it's completely different from what we've had the last couple of years, where it's been very New England, very heavy man. It's very different. So I think this is a good week to get for the Fangio's defense to get right, because they're in the bottom half of the league in most categories right now. Yeah,
I think they'll win the game as well. I picked them. I did pick Giants plus 13 or 12.5, whenever it was when I did my my podcast. I just think it's a big spread, and they're very well coached on offense traditionally, the Giants, and I think there'll be enough drive just for them to get a few points. But yeah, I agree, Miami will win. And then maybe kind of run the ball a bit more in the second half, which would just stop the score getting out of control. Plus, Wink likes to blitz load, so it's one of those situations where if you are running the score up, he's just going to send people after Tua, and you guys are just not going to be. You don't want to expose him to that. So I reckon second half of the game you'll run the ball more. But yeah, Miami to win, but maybe I'll have a bit closer.
Yeah, if Saquon is if he plays, and this could be a trap game for the Dolphins, but it's sort of up in the air whether he actually does play or not, because he's been back in practice. He's been limited the last couple of days though, so we'll see how that goes on. On to Houston, who goes to Atlanta. The Falcons are just favourites at 1.5 points. It sounds like the Texans are getting their offensive line back though, which is huge news for them, because they've had a makeshift offensive line, and Stroud's really impressed. He's setting rookie records behind that O-line. How impressed have you been with his play so far?
Yeah, really impressed. Yeah, I had him as QB1 in the previews, the draft previews that we did. Absolutely loved him in college, and he's probably a top 15 quarterback in the NFL right now with how he's playing. I do think quarterback play's been down league-wide this year. But yeah, he's been great, so I do expect them to win the game. Ridder, unfortunately for him, has not been great. He did actually play quite well in week 1 and 2 for his level. But yeah, week 3 and then last week, especially in London, was really, really bad. So yeah, I think the Texans will win the game. They got both their tackles back, like you said, so they should be able to run the ball a bit better. They have struggled to run the ball. And I think the defenses are probably similar levels. So I just think the Texans will do enough and win this game.
Well, that's the thing as well. The Falcons, they're actually sort of in some categories a top 10 defense, but after spending a lot of money on it, it's a lot better than it was last year, but they're nothing special by any means. And the same with the Texans, they've got a lot of young pieces on there. Obviously, Derek Stingley's an IR, etc. But they got a nice sort of receiver duo in Nico Collins and Tank Dell, who've both come on really well. But obviously, Charles been distributing the ball to other guys too. And with Ridder as well, I think I think he holds on to the ball for too long, and I think he's like Tannehill. Obviously, suits of Arthur Smith being the head coach. He just can't really feel pressure, and I mean, you see some of the sacks he's taken is quite bad, really, isn't it? Just the way he just I think a couple of weeks ago he was pressured 5 times and took sacks on 4. for occasions like that's really bad because the Falcons' offensive line, it's not bad. It's not like it's one of the worst units in the league or anything like that, and he's still one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, just struggling to read defenses and understand pressure packages, definitely. And it's a good offensive line from a run blocking perspective, which is why they run the ball so much. But him and the center have been struggling to identify who's blitzing from where, because eventually you've got to take that off the quarterback and just give it to the center. But even you could see last week, even he didn't have a clue what was going on. So the offense looks a bit all over the place. If it's not rushing for 300 yards, they're going to struggle to win games. And I think their defense is like 25th in DVOA as well for the Falcons. So it's good in some counting stats. When you look at it compared to who they've played, it's not great. So I do think Texans will win. I think Stroud will play well.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Texans too, but I think the Falcons will make this a close one because if they can control the game, it's a home game too. If they can control the game by running the ball, then it will come down to the wire like it has done other than the other three Falcons games, other than the one in London. On to an all AFC North tie now. The Ravens are 3.5-point favourites in Pittsburgh. And after a slow start, the Baltimore offense has been rolling these last couple of weeks. They're getting healthier on defense too. Marlon Humphrey was a full participant in practice. They have lost David Ojabo to IR. It looks like Odell Beckham and Justice Hill could be back too, which is good for the offense. And I think Baltimore are probably the team to beat in the AFC North now, especially the Browns' injuries. The Bengals haven't started well at all, especially on offense. And obviously Pittsburgh have been really underwhelming. You said that you picked the Ravens to win the division a couple of weeks ago. Your prediction's looking pretty good now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. I didn't anticipate Bengals being as bad. I did say they'd only win like 10 or 11 games, but that might be a stretch. But yeah, like you said, the injuries are killing the Browns. Pittsburgh quarterback and OC play. I think a lot of us were you're either on one side or the other when it comes to Pickett. Other people really like him, or they seem to really dislike him, and I was always against him. So yeah, Ravens looking good to win the division, and I think as well the spread's a little bit light in this game. I think it was 3.5 is the best you can get, and yeah, I think Ravens are much better than 3.5, better than this Steelers team, because the Steelers secondary don't look great either at the moment, and the offensive lines looks better, but not incredible. So yeah, for me, it doesn't matter who plays quarterback. I think the Ravens will win this game.
Yeah, it sounds like Pickett is good to go. He was limited in practice, but looks like he's sort of got away with that hit to the knee, which took him out of the game on Sunday. Pat Freiermuth is out though, likely out of a hamstring. He got hurt in the game too, so that's a big miss for their offense too. So I'm picking the Ravens. I'm interested to see how the Ravens offense faces up against the Pittsburgh defensive line, because they're about Cam Hayward, but they're still playing pretty well. TJ Watt especially has been unreal this year. It was my defensive player of the year pick, and that's looking quite good now with all the turnovers and stuff he's produced, as well as his 5-6 sacks. I'm going to go with the Ravens, and I think it will be over 3.5 points, as I said. Now, this one is interesting. The Saints and the Patriots. So I think it's going to be very low scoring. Two pretty good defenses, I think, but not so good offenses. Obviously, the Patriots had a big blow in the league, not only losing Christian Gonzalez for potentially the season, but also it was looking like it would be one of the favourites for defensive rookie of the year. They've also lost Matt Judon for the majority of the season too. He's got bicep surgery, so they've lost two of their best players on defense. They brought back JC Jackson for nothing really, which it'd be interesting to see if Bill can sort of fix him, because he was pretty broken in LA. No doubt there really. And then the Saints, they struggled on offense last week. Obviously, Carr played out of nowhere. It looks like he wasn't going to play this week. They just turned up and he missed a couple of shots to Chris Olave. I think I saw a shot where he was targeted for like 146 air yards and he got 4 yards in general. It just shows that the offense wasn't really flowing. They had one pass broken up by Antoine Winfield in the end zone too. But I'm going to pick the Saints here just because I'm not high on New England at all, even though it's in Foxborough. I don't know, last week was really discouraging because Belichick teams don't play like that. They don't, and it was the biggest loss ever. They look so they got absolutely outcoached by Mike McCarthy's Cowboys team. It's just like, I don't know, the offense, and also I thought Belichick had a plan for the Cowboys offense because Dak's not exactly an elite quarterback, but just that's what I'm going to go for the Saints on this one.
Yeah, we'll talk about him later, but maybe one of us thinks Dak is an elite quarterback, but that's a teaser for
really?
the last game, or the second last game. But yeah, for this one, I'm picking the Saints, I think. I think it's a terrible game. It's not going to be a good game to watch. They're both top 10 in DVOA for defense, both bottom 10 in DVOA for offense. So yeah, I'm with you. It should be a low-scoring game. The injuries for the Patriots do worry me that maybe it could turn into a bit of a, I don't know, 17-0 or 13-0 start for the Patriots, and then for the Saints, and then the Patriots have to start throwing it around, and maybe we get more points. But yeah, I think that they should win. I'd like to see Derek Carr look a bit better, because otherwise I think they probably should have rested him and just let him fully recover, because he did look really bad. And I'd like to see them sort out their red zone offense, because they are struggling to score touchdowns when they get past the 30-yard line. If it's not a bomb to Olave or a slant to Thomas, it's just not going in the end zone at the moment. So yeah, big game for the Saints. Feel like they need to win this one after how they played last week.
It surprises me as well, because they've got two sort of players who you'd like to think would be quite creative in the red zone. In Alvin Kamara and Rashid Shaheed, they're two players who can do multiple things. They're both great pass catchers. They can both run the football as well. It makes you wonder what they could potentially be. But yeah, their offense has underwhelmed so far. Another all-division battle, this one in the AFC South. The Titans go into Indianapolis. I think most of the teams are very well coached, actually, which I'm happy to see for the Colts too. They both have defenses playing really well too as well, actually. Every AFC South team is 2-2, so whoever wins this is looking really good. It doesn't look like Jonathan Taylor's going to play, even though he's designated to return. It doesn't look like he's ever going to play for the Colts again, but he could turn up out of nowhere, which we'll see what happens with him. But I think it's more likely he gets traded. It sounds like the Colts could be without Shaq Leonard, which is a big miss for their defense. Obviously, he's at the heart of that defense. But it sounds like DeForest Buckner's good to go again. But for the Titans, they still will be without Treylon Burks, who's on the sideline for another week. He didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday. I think the Colts just have a bit more offensively, to be honest with you. Anthony Richardson's really impressed me. Zach Moss has run the ball well as well, actually. So I'm picking them to upset the Titans, who are away favourites, which surprises me, to be honest with you. I guess it's a variable factor, but I think Richardson's really impressed, hasn't he? Sort of compared to where we thought he'd be at right now, and what we thought would be very raw, and he hasn't looked very raw at all. Actually, he's looked quite good, I think.
Yeah, they haven't thrown the ball loads, but
no,
he's thrown the ball well every time they've asked him to do it, especially on first and second down, which is rare because they do run the ball a lot. But yeah, they've looked pretty good. Their defensive lines looks better than I thought as well. I did have the Colts to finish last in the division, but this looks better than I thought, to be honest, from a defensive perspective. However, this is the first game we picked differently because I picked the Titans to win the division before the season, so still need to keep backing them no matter how bad they look. But yeah, I just think the defense is a bit of a nightmare for the Colts in terms of this game. They're very good at stopping the run. Tennessee are. They're very good against rushing quarterbacks. They hit quarterbacks a lot, and he's only finished one NFL game that he started so far. So,
yeah, true.
Yeah, I think it'll be low scoring. It'll be a typical AFC South, not the prettiest football. But I think we'll see a few play action bombs from both teams, but Tennessee will probably win. But I think it'll be tight, really tight game, but I think they win.
Yeah, it's one of those games that you'll see in the witching hour and red zone for sure.
Yeah,
and I'll see whilst I'm watching in the car on the way back from Spurs on Sunday. On to another one of the biggest spreads in this week. It's the Lions, who are 10.5-point favourites against the Panthers. It's in Detroit. They're looking to go 4-1, which would be a huge moment for that franchise. It's mental. But they might be without Amon-Ra St. Brown, who hasn't practiced this week. He's had an abdomen issue, although it sounds like he wants to play. He's determined to play, so we'll see how that goes over the weekend. I'm hoping to see a bit more Jahmyr Gibbs in this one. He's been so good when he gets the football, but he's not had it as much as we'd all like him to. The Panthers are really disappointing me this year. Young's getting killed. They're getting no separation from the receivers, really. The best game offensively was with Andy Dalton against the Seahawks. And right now they'll probably be in number one pick territory if they had their pick, but obviously Chicago have it, so if you're a Bears fan, you're probably loving this. But the defense is super banged up too, so I might even go for the over for the Lions to win this one. I really like what they're doing, and I just don't trust the Panthers because, again, their defense they should be a good defense because of how the talent they've got, but they just keep getting injured every year. I don't trust them at all.
Yeah, it's strange as well because they paid a lot of money for this coaching staff, so I was hoping or thinking they'd be quite well coached, but yeah, I just don't think they're well coached on either side of the ball at the moment. They seem to be struggling. It's like they don't quite know what personnel they've got, and they don't quite know how to use them. And obviously, I think Bryce Young's looked worse than they thought. So, yeah, I think the Lions will win. Yeah, I wouldn't be betting the actual spread in this game, but if I had to pick a side, I'd still pick the Lions. Be interesting to see if Jameson Williams, now he's back this week, how much he'll play. because he's got one career catch so far, and
Yeah, I know.
me included, hoped that he'd be very, very good. However, I'm starting to hope him to not be good, so the Chiefs can trade for him. But that's a separate podcast. But yeah, I think the Lions will win this game. They'll be able to run the ball for sure on Carolina. They're not very good at stopping the run. So yeah, but if you're a Carolina fan, can we just see Bryce Young play well, regardless of the score? Because it's not looked good so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk that the Panthers are in the market for a receiver. One of the names I've seen mentioned is actually Jameson Williams. I think Detroit would, if the right offer came, I think they would potentially move on from him. So that's something to watch. It seemed like that's a John Mechie, and so people who play for Alabama have been linked along with many other receivers as well. So we'll see how that goes. But I think they're definitely in the trade market for someone. On to the Bengals, who have underwhelmed this season for sure. They're 2.5-point favourites at Arizona. It doesn't sound good for T. Higgins. It looks like he's out with that rib injury he picked up at the end of the game last week. Burrow's playing again, but he's going up against like a relentless Arizona defense who just obviously they've got nothing to really lose. So they're going to play hard. If Cincinnati lose or they struggle offensively again, I think serious questions need to be asked about what happens to Burrow now. Because if you fall to 1-4, I don't really know what happened. It just doesn't make sense to me. What do you think is the issue? Do you think it's his health? Do you think just his health? Do you think it's the coaching, which has been suspect as well this year? The defense hasn't played as well as it has done recently. The last couple of years either. What do you think is the main root problem with the Bengals this season?
I don't know if there is a main. I think there's three. I think the offensive line's played really bad.
Yeah.
Orlando Brown looks really bad. And Jonah Williams moving to the right side is not as good as he looked last year either. Obviously, the injury is a factor. You can clearly see that. But yeah, it could be the coaching because you watch the games and every throw is just a go ball down the sideline. Every single throw. And what that does is it doesn't help your defense at all. So your defense, who's there to try and win you games whilst Burrow's hurt, they're having to come on the field because it's 3 and out. It's like either a touchdown drive or 3 and out nearly every single time. I've never really been a big fan of Zach Taylor, and then he had that big run, and I think people thought that he was kind of turned the corner. I know he doesn't call the plays, but I'd be interested to know who's organising the game plans because it's just a lot of deep throws. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of a combination of everything. Burrow does seem to be healthier this week. All the beat reporters said on Wednesday he moved around more than he has all season, which is a positive for them. And I would say that T. Higgins being out impacts them for how long he's out, but I don't think it'll make a difference for this game. I think you'll just be able to pepper other targets and get Chase involved. The line for this game was 8.5 before the season, and it's 2.5 now. So that does show you about how these two teams have changed. But yeah, I think the Bengals will win. Adam, who's part of this network, big Bengals fan, thinks it'll be quite close even if they do win. So it could be a fun Arizona game again, but I just think Burrow will be able to do enough to win it.
I'm with Adam here. I think it'll be really close. So I'm still going to pick the Bengals to win, but I think we've seen they've played well against anyone. It was within against the Niners. It was within a score. Obviously, beat the Cowboys. So it just shows that. And I'm sure Gannon's got something up his sleeve as well. He's had a really good year so far coaching the defense. But I think they might upset, but I can't pick against the Bengals just talent wise, for sure. And I think with Cincinnati as well, I think it's just like it just seems like a fatigue. Obviously, you mentioned the coaching, right? What do they do? They're not going to fire Zach Taylor, are they? They probably can't do that.
No, he'd probably call the plays instead of the OC.
So you think he'd take over play calling if it carries on then?
Yeah, that's what I think he would do if they carry on losing. But you never know. If they win this game, they win by 14-17 and he's a bit healthier, things just start to roll because they got quite a hard schedule coming up, so they do need to actually win this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll be my guess. They're not going to fire Taylor, lose probably the best DC or top 3-4 DCs in the league. And the OC, I forgot his name now, but he's had 5 head coach interviews, so they're well thought of staff. It's just maybe things aren't quite clicking at the moment. But yeah, I think they'll win this, and then maybe we'll start to see things turn around a bit.
Yeah, we'll see. On to the Philadelphia now. the team who lost in the Super Bowl last year. They're 4.5 point favourites against the Rams, who beat the Bengals in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. It looks like it could be the long-awaited return of Cooper Kupp this week. I can't wait to see the receiver core of him, Puka Nacua, and Tutu Atwell. I think that's actually quite a good trio. And they're going up against, the defense is going up against a Philly offense who had its best performance last week by far, because I think they've sort of not, under Brian Johnson, they've sort of struggled offensively compared to what they were last year with Steichen. It sounds like Fletcher Cox is out, but they're sort of lucky to have such talent that they've got. Obviously, the current Defensive Rookie of the Year favourite in Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis there as well, so it won't be too big of a miss. It doesn't look like Cam Jurgens is going to play either, which I'm sure Aaron Donald loves, because that's right in the middle of that offensive line. But I'm interested to see how much of an impact he can have, obviously, because the Eagles have got one of the best offensive lines in football. I'm going to pick the Eagles here, but I think this is going to be a really close game. Because I'm loving I'm loving how the Rams are looking. Obviously, the Eagles are very talented. I think they're sort of trying to get in a groove now, although they almost dropped the game to Washington last week. At the start of the game, they were really good. I think it'll be close, but I can't pick against the Eagles.
Yeah, I think it could be the best game of the day from the kind of two earlier slates anyway. It's a really, really fun game. I think second highest points total as well for that slate. So, yeah. I did pick the Rams with the points because we pick it with the spread, so 4.5. Say maybe Eagles win it, but I do think it'll be a really close game. I think the Eagles are going to get a lot of rush yards in this game. They'll be running right at Aaron Donald all game long to try and tire him out. So I think they'll be able to run the ball well, but I think that Matt Stafford's going to throw for like 380 yards on this defense, just in the middle of the field, just up the seam to Cooper Kupp or Puka over and over again. I'll say the Eagles scrape it out, but I want the Rams to win because I think they've been a pretty cool story for the start of the season. And I love Matt Stafford, so they've been playing well. But I just hope Kupp has come back at the right time and it's not too early, because he looks good in the 3-minute practice videos we all keep seeing of him in the ladders or him breaking out of slants, but that's different to running full pelt against Darius Slay, for example. So let's just hope he's fully healthy. For
sure. On to the game with the sort of biggest storyline this week. It's the Jets and the Broncos. Obviously, it's Sean Payton against Nathaniel Hackett. There's been talk about this game for weeks since the comments that Payton made. Obviously, it's actually funny because the Broncos have one of the worst coach teams in football this year. Since then, especially on the defensive side of the ball, obviously. So my eyes are on this one. A lot of emotion going into it. The Jets impressed me offensively against your Chiefs. Like the play calling was totally different than it was the other two games. It was much more similar to the Buffalo game from Hackett. I think the offense is the Broncos. I say Zach Wilson impressed me, which he didn't do the other 2 weeks. The Broncos offense is looking better too. Russ has been a top 10 QB this year in some things, which again it shows that QB plays down, like you said. But they should have probably won 3 or 4 games. The defense has let them down, really, hasn't it? And it's been historically bad.
Yeah, it's been historically bad. And a unit that everyone thought would be good, at least good. Like maybe not top 5, but everyone thought, oh wow, good defense. Good defensive tackles, great safeties, good corner. Well, really good starting corner. Second corner's good. They've just been an absolute disaster. I'm not quite with you on the Russell Wilson being anywhere near a top 10 play.
Really? I
still haven't. Bottom 10.
He looks a lot better. Really? I think he looks a lot better. Like, it just reminds me, I don't know, maybe, especially, he's not got the best receivers to throw to, but I don't know, it's just some, a lot of it's quite conservative as well, but it's just, the deep bombs to Marvin Mims, like they had none of that last year. It reminds me of Lockett a bit, and he's friendly with like Brandon Johnson and all these people we hadn't heard of at the start of the year because they've lost Tim Patrick, and it sounds like Judy might be traded as well. Like for what he's had to deal with, especially the offensive line as well. He's been under pressure a lot. I'm sort of he's not been a problem at all this season for Denver. I know. Yeah,
they've been losing a lot though. Like if you look at the yards he gets when they're not
True.
Losing by 20 points, it's not great. But maybe I'm wrong. But we'll see how the season develops. But he has looked better than last year. But last year was like all time one of the worst seasons you could possibly get. All I'll say is in this game I'll take the better quarterback, and that's the other Wilson. So I'm going to go with
wow.
I'm going to go with Zach Wilson. But this is a fun game because the coaching staff obviously hate each other. So this is going to be quite an entertaining watch. I'm hoping for points just because it's one of those kind of interesting games where chaos could just ensue and there could be 2 or 3 picks and a fumble or whatever. But should be fun. But I'm going to go for the Jets to win. But I think it'll be close and it'll be back and forth. And whoever wins is probably going to win by a field goal, it feels like.
Just quickly, what did you think of obviously the way the Jets played offensively in the second half last week? Because it looked quite impressive, especially against like the Chiefs defense, which is one of the best in the league, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think we played very well. I think second quarter they played pretty well. It was a lot of tight ends though, so it's a lot of tight ends open against linebackers, which I think if you give yourself, like you said, in week 2 and 3 they didn't do that at all. They were playing like one tight end all the time, whereas against us they played 3 tight ends nearly the whole game. So yeah, maybe they found a little bit of a gem there. But yeah, I thought he played well. The most impressive thing was the offensive line actually looked good. Didn't look great, but it looked good.
They could actually run the ball a bit as well, because they couldn't do it. The 2 previous games against Dallas and the Patriots, like Brees and Dalvin Cook were averaging like 2 yards per carry. Those other games, like
yeah, and that's with a couple of injuries as well. So maybe they found an offensive line combo that works a bit better now, and they're in. So yeah, well they did good. But yeah, they're having short fields and stuff from our offense. But yeah, they played way better than the other 2 weeks. I think for them, they just need to make sure the run game starts this game well, and then Zach Wilson can get confident like he did against us. You don't want Zach Wilson having to throw it 10 times in the first quarter and throwing a pick, and then it kills his confidence. But yeah, it's improvement. So hopefully he does it again, because he seems like a good kid, and it was tough to watch him blame the loss on himself after. I know,
because it wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault at all. I mean, like,
you can't fumble, but it's just like that happens to everyone. So
exactly. It's not like, and also it's not like it was right at the end of the game either. There was still time to go in that game too.
Yeah, definitely.
They could have got the ball back, and it's not like it's that crucial. But I'm going to pick the Broncos. I don't know, maybe it's because I live with a Broncos fan and I hear about them 24/7. It's probably, but it's just, I know I'm quite high on the Broncos this year. From compared to others, just to clarify, I don't know top 10 team in the league or anything like that. But I'm hoping the offense sort of continues where it was at the end of the game against the Bears as well, because they've not really played like a full game of offense. It's like they'd be good in the first half, the first couple of games, and then be terrible in the second half. Last week they were terrible in the first half, great in the second half in offense. So they've not really played a full game. So we'll see how that goes against this defense. But I'm just going to take the Broncos. I think it'll be a close one. The final game of the two main windows, it's the Chiefs going into Minnesota. The Chiefs are 4.5-point favourites. It's 2 teams that I'm not really sure like what they are. Like I'm don't get me wrong, I'm way more confident on the Chiefs than I am the Vikings, but I just think the Chiefs offense looked really good in the first quarter against the Jets, but then the rest of the game just wasn't the same at all. Obviously Mahomes threw a couple of interceptions there, so it just didn't really click as much, because I think the first quarter I said to Charlie, I was like, before our fire alarm went off, because it went off in the middle of the game. Honestly, it went off in the middle of the game. It was 17-0 up. So the Chiefs were 17-0 up. The fire alarm went off. We all went downstairs to see what was going on, right? And I said to Charlie and Owen, I was like, okay, the Chiefs are back. This is all. I'm going to bed now. I don't want to watch the rest of the game. I wake up and I see it was 3-point game. I'm like, what happened there? It just shows how the game swung. But I think. And then going back to the Vikings, obviously they've been great yardage, production-wise on offense, and super aggressive on defense, which has its risk and reward. Of Flores is what he's always done. He's had them burnt a couple of times, but overall it's an improvement. But their problem is they keep turning the ball over, especially fumbling. Like, they aren't great situationally either. They played their worst game against Carolina, ended up winning. I actually thought they were much better in the other 3 games. And yeah, it's just I don't know what the Vikings are at all. I think they can score. They can outscore anyone. I hope this is a shootout, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant to sort of pick the Chiefs up the over. But I don't know. What are your thoughts? Obviously, you watch the Chiefs way more than me. What are your thoughts on how this game's going to go?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game.
Yeah.
Because I do think that the Chiefs. Well, either way, even if I'm wrong, there'll be a lot of points, because I think the Chiefs will jump out to a bit of a lead, and that's perfect kind of Kirk Cousins' time. Then when he's behind a couple of scores, he can feel a bit the pressure's off, and he'll throw the ball a lot. And he's played pretty well at times, but he's just turned the ball over a lot.
Yeah, he's got 4 picks, which isn't bad. It's just when those 4 picks have come, they've all come at really bad moments. Like the one in the end zone against the Chargers, obviously the pick 6 last week. It's the one against the Bucs was costly. His fumble against the Bucs was costly. Like, it's just it's the moments that they've come have been like detrimental to the Vikings.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always liked him as well. And I think their defense has improved, but they are blitzing a lot. Like they blitzed Herbert on like 60% of his dropbacks, and Patrick Mahomes is basically stats.
It's very Flores.
Yeah, if you just do Patrick Mahomes against the blitz, every single advanced metric, he'd be nearly 2.5 times better than Tom Brady's best season ever when he's against the blitz. That's why teams just drop back into coverage and just don't ever blitz because they're like, it's too risky. So I'll be interested. If they blitz a lot, I think the Chiefs could score 40. But if they don't and they sit back and they play a bit of a New England style defense that Flores obviously would have learned from Bill, then it could be a lot closer because the Chiefs wide receivers just need to start being man coverage a little bit more often. But yeah, overall, not worried about the Chiefs. They're still like 6th in DVOA on offense with the worst start they've had to a season. And this time last year, they were like 11th on offense, and then they ended up with the greatest offensive DVOA season in history. So I think it just takes time. My main worry would just be how does Kelsey look in this game? Just a little bit slower this year than other years. But he obviously had that injury, so I'd be interested. Yeah. I think if you're going to bet, both tight ends are good bets for yards here because neither team can guard tight ends. But yeah, should be a fun game. But I think the Chiefs win by something like 10 points, touchdown, that range.
I think it says something about obviously how good Mahomes is as well. That this has been, not a great start of the season at all, and he's still a top 5 QB in most numbers and everything as well. It just shows out obviously how he is literally like even when he's on a bad day, the Chiefs can still win. When a lot of
and he was bad against the Jets.
Yeah, that's
like he was bad. He wasn't just bad for like Mahomes. He was like 20th QB good level for NFL, which never happens with him. His bad days are like 3 great quarters and 1 stupid pick. It's never a bad day. So for him to play bad, I'm just glad that the Chiefs managed to win. But yeah, it should be a fun game. If you can't score points against this defense, then it could be trade time for a wide receiver or for Kyle Pitts, like I keep telling all my friends.
Kyle Pitts will be a big addition. I mean, look, Kyle Pitts is getting less targets than John U. Smith the last couple of weeks.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It's like John U. Smith went for 99 yards last week.
I know.
It's just like, what? It's just ridiculous, really, isn't it? But no, again, I'm picking the Chiefs here. It'll be close.
Do you think it'll be close?
I do. I think it'll be a shootout. I can see it being like 38-35, Chiefs win, something like that.
That'd be a fun game for 9:30. Not many high-scoring teams in that window.
Well, the late window last week was atrocious. Again, you had the Chargers almost charging against the Raiders, but other than that, it just wasn't competitive whatsoever. So hopefully we have a better late window, especially as I'm going to be sitting down watching these games at home after I'm back from London as well. So these games I actually going to focus on. We'll finish off with Sunday Night Football as well. The Cowboys going into San Francisco, a repeat of the divisional round in the playoffs last year. The Niners came away from that one and went to the NFC Championship after a close game, though. It was pretty close between both of them. This is the game week by far. Again, it could be a potential NFC Championship preview. Obviously, a big rivalry between these two teams. Back in the day, nowadays, 2 of the NFC favourites and 2 of the most loaded rosters as well. Liam? What are you looking for in this game?
Yeah, one thing that intrigues me is this is the second game without Diggs, but they haven't had last week. They didn't have much time to prepare in terms of after he got injured. It wasn't as known. They didn't know who was going to play where. They kind of changed mid game who played slot, who played outside as well. But one stat I found interesting was the Cowboys are 28th in the NFL at defending the middle of the field for passes. The 49ers are number 1 in every metric of throwing the ball in the middle of the field. Outside of the numbers, they're not very good compared to the rest. But yeah, middle of the field. So I'm almost thinking like, okay, these linebackers for the Cowboys, now they've lost their number 1 corner. Who's going to play slot corner? Who's going to play outside? I think for me, I'm kind of watching out how that first drive or 2 goes for the 49ers. How often are they just middle of the field? Are you middle of the field Kittle, CMC out the backfield? I think that could be a bit of a struggle for the Cowboys. So for me, if you're Dallas, I think you have to score early and kind of keep your foot on the throat, which worries me because it was the 49ers game that clearly got Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy to fall out. Him mentioning that we were not controlling the game, not controlling the clock. I think if you try and control the clock against San Francisco, you'll be in trouble. I think you need to focus on scoring points. And yeah, we'll talk about the rest of the game in a minute. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 keys, I think. What game plan will Dallas have aggressiveness-wise? And how often San Francisco just pepper the middle of the field? Or do they not? And do they just play their usual game? But yeah, if they go middle of the field against those linebackers, I think they'll score a lot of points. Yeah,
again, in the playoffs last year, it was the only difference between these two teams was a Christian McCaffrey touchdown. It was very a field goal heavy that game. Yeah, very very tight game. It came down to the wire. came down to a Dak Hail Mary. That game did.
Zeke Elliott, it came down to getting Zeke Elliott getting nailed after he snapped the ball, which is probably the funniest moment I've ever seen in the playoff.
And like with that one as well, it was like they ran the clock down. They could have come back. So they wasted a bit of time as well. They didn't bother just running into the running and snapping the ball and losing it down. I think they left that 10 seconds on the clock to the very end of the game as well. So obviously that kind of cost them a little bit towards the end of the game as well. As well as a Brett Maher extra point miss as well. That was another thing that was quite crucial in that game. I think the Niners have looked unbeatable this season, really, haven't they? The Dallas defense has been immense. The offense has been good, but both units had a down game against Arizona. The Cowboys were back on song against New England last week. Both units played lights out. Again, giving Belichick the biggest loss in his career is a statement, really, isn't it? I said it. Both lack an elite quarterback, but they're so talented everywhere else that they can beat anyone without them. It's hard to say that for many other teams, if you're being honest. Like there's two of the most loaded teams in the NFL. So you say that you believe Dak's an elite quarterback, or you just put him on leg there?
Well, it depends what you class as elite, but yeah, he's like 7 or 8 maybe on my my analytics I use for the betting that we do. So yeah, if you class top 8 as elite, then he's elite. If you say maybe not quite,
see,
not
for
quite.
me, elite is Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, and then there's a drop.
Yeah,
that's
yeah, he's in the next tier. He's, like I said, he's 8 for me. But compared to the guys playing against, he's like 15, 14 spots higher for me. Yeah. So yeah, he's by far the better player. He gets a lot of unnecessary stick for me. But last year he threw some interceptions, and oh god, he's got to look after the ball. It's like, well, you realise the 4 seasons before that he threw the least interceptions of anyone in the NFL. So
he was hurt last year as well. That's the thing.
Yeah,
obviously he missed games at the start.
The offense has got to play better though. Brandon Cooks hasn't looked as good as I'd hoped he'd look. I'm still a little bit worried.
1,000-yard receiving streak to carry on as well, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he needs to go a bit quicker if he wants that. And Michael Gallup as well still doesn't look right for me after the injuries. And they are missing Dalton Schultz. They've got good tight ends for the red zone, but they don't get involved as much from between the 20s. So yeah, for me, the pass game needs to look better because the run game has actually been way better than I thought. Pollard has actually handled the load, being a smaller running back, better than I thought. But in this game, they're going to have to score a lot of points. It doesn't matter how good the Cowboys defense is. 49ers are going to score 24, 27 minimum. So to win the game, Dak needs to score 30. I think he can. I picked the Cowboys to win on the betting podcast last night. I think they win, and everyone realizes Brock Purdy's not as good as they keep telling everyone he is.
Again, I feel like this game is going to come down to like the quarterbacks. I think because the rest of the game is pretty evenly matched. Like you got a run game, you got a good defense, 2 pretty good offensive lines. You got everything there. It's quite obviously 2 great D lines as well. Obviously 2 of the best pass rushers in football, and Bosa and Micah Parsons. Yeah, they're pretty. Look at both teams. They're pretty similar. It's just which quarterback can make a play, when needed. And again, if they can disrupt Purdy, I don't know if he can do that. Well, again, I with you, I agree that I think Dak has more. I think Dak's more likely to do that, and I think for him as well, because he's got a lot of stick lately. Obviously, they brought in Trey Lance and everything. That's it's
a big game for Dak.
Yeah, it's a big. If he can show you can win that game against San Francisco, obviously, then I think that's a massive. It'd be a massive thing for him. His perception more than anything as well. Because obviously, I'm low on him, lower on him than most. I'd probably say he's like 10 to 15 range for me, which I think is still good. But I don't think he's. Yeah, I think he's around there with Tua and Kirk Cousins in my opinion. I think he's just that kind of. I'm not saying he's. I'd rather have a lot of QBs over him. I'd probably rather have Justin Fields over Dak Prescott, if I'm being honest. But because I'm just massive on Fields. Yeah,
I like honestly, that. That's a funny shot.
I could go and knock on Charlie's door right now. He's literally right over there, and he'll agree with me. I guarantee you, right? I guarantee it. But yeah, no, I think again it comes down to those 2. Injury wise. Zach Milton and Tyron Swift didn't practice Wednesday, but that could actually be a veteran thing. So I went to watch over the weekend. They both have had knocks though. Obviously, Micah Parsons limped off of his knee injury, but he looks okay. Yeah. He obviously came back into the game as well. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously he's not 100%. He's still limited in practice this week, but we'll see how he'll. I'm interested to see how good he looks. Obviously, because he limped off pretty visually last week, didn't he?
Yeah. I think all the injuries to the game are actually key in general as well, because the Cowboys could have their offensive line back for the first time in a long time. And then, like you said, Parsons might start the game 3 or 4 plays in, re-aggravates it, and the game's a lot different then, just because you're going to struggle to get pressure off the edge without Parsons, or the same level of pressure. So yeah, I agree with you. Kind of watch out for practice reports if you are going to like bet the game or fantasy lineups or whatever, because it could change. But either way, it doesn't matter who plays in this game. These two teams are interesting, and the Cowboys are desperate to beat this team. So I think the game's going to be fun. It'll probably be the best, if not one of the best, Sunday night football games we watch all year. So it's definitely one to stay up for in the UK.
Well, yeah, if you look at some of the most recent primetime games, they've not been great at all. Obviously Thursday night Bears Commanders isn't very interesting. Ultimately, it came interesting towards the end of it, or as soon as Phil started balling, and DJ Moore got his 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. But that's more storyline than anything. But yeah, I think it's again Sunday night football has been the last couple. Steelers Raiders in 2023, which is the most boring game possible, and that was a Sunday night game. You've had like Cowboys Giants, that was a blowout. Like this is going to be the best Sunday night game you're going to get. You've got this year for sure. I'm going to go for the Niners, but I'm not confident they're going to win by 4 points. If I'm being honest, I think it'll be quite close. But I have a feeling Dallas might just have something up their finger. Like you said, their sleeve. Sorry. I think they're just. That was honestly, it's been one of those long days where I just messing up my words all the time. I was gonna say I just can't quite put my finger on what that will be. So I'm gonna go for the Niners, but yeah, I might even stay up for this one. To be honest, I've got a day off on Tuesday, so sorry, on Monday, so I might stay up and watch all of it. What about you, mate?
Yeah. Same. Yeah, I'm probably going to stay up. I haven't got a day off on Monday, but yeah, it'd be one of them where I just commit to it and be tired for work on Monday. But yeah, it should be one of the best games of the year. I think it'll be a bit of a shootout. The total's only 44.5, so it's a lower total for the bigger games, but that's just because it's two good defenses. But I think you'll see great defensive plays and plenty of points in this game. So yeah, it should be a good one. See if Mike McCarthy lets me down or not.
That's it for the podcast this week. Liam, it's been great to have you on as always. Thank you for adding some analytical spin as well. It's always nice to have some stats on the podcast as well. As someone who likes stats, it's always nice to have something that I've not already looked at before. So thank you very much for coming on, mate. It's been good, and obviously we'll get you on throughout the season as always.
Yeah, cheers for having me. Good luck to your Dolphins against the Giants. Don't lose this game, or else I'll be texting you straight away on Sunday night. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was. Again, I said I have a feeling I was on a Dolphins podcast at the start of the year, and I picked this game as a trap game. So I hope I'm not right, but we'll see. Obviously, the two teams are shaped out a bit different now to how we thought they'd be. One very good, the other terrible. But Martin Dell might have something up his sleeve. I think, especially how the offensive line looked last week as well. That's something that does concern me. Compared to the other weeks, but we'll see. Anyway, yeah, thank you for coming on, Liam. Obviously, thank you to Ben Isaacs too for sharing some insight on his book and previewing the London game with me. If you are around on Sunday and you do see me, come over and say hello. I'm not going to bite. It'd be nice to meet you all. But yeah, no, thank you for listening to the Full 10 Yards podcast. We will see you on Monday for our Week 5 recap. And we'll recap the London game, because again, it's London games. We're in full swing now, and we haven't got many on the season. And it's always nice to watch some football in person in the UK, because I'm not going to America because it costs a fortune, especially as a student. So, but if you do see me, I'll do say hello. I'll come and I'll offer you some words of wisdom on the game, which I'm sure I'll probably be too drunk to remember by the morning. But yeah, I'll see you next time, and bring on the London games again.